Battle Through the Heavens. Chapter 955, 9 Turning Wind Steps. Upon hearing these words of Xiao Yan, even Han Shui and Han Yu in the hall also became stunned. He would withdraw if his body was touched within 10 exchanges. Although they were really confident in Xiao Yan, Han Tian was ultimately a genuine 8-star Dou Huang regardless of how one put it. Even if Xiao Yan's actual strength was similar to his, saying these words was really a little arrogant. Cuckoo, looks like little brother Xiao Yan really has great confidence in himself. Han Qi laughed. He was the first to recover after being stunned for a moment. Most of the people who could enter the inner academy were extremely talented individuals. Since Xiao Yan in front of him dared to open his mouth to say such words, he either purposefully used this to escape from the matter or he was really confident in his own strength. He really hoped that it was the latter in such a situation. Xiao Yan, can you do it? Second uncle practices wind affinity chi methods. Agility is something that he specializes in. If you do this, Han Yu hesitated for a moment before turning her head and softly speaking to Xiao Yan. Since the both of you have praised me all the way up to the sky in front of so many people, it would be my fault for appearing ordinary, Xiao Yan smiled. His gaze paused on Han Tian and said, Mr. Han Tian, please attack. Haha, good fellow. This arrogance can really compete with that Hong Chen. Alright, since you insist on doing so, I shall try and see how you will stop me from touching you within 10 exchanges. Han Tian laughed loudly. He stepped forward and powerful Dou Qi surged from his body like floodwater. Immediately, numerous spiraling winds formed around him. The wild wind that howled, blew away the layer of dust on the ground of the hall. Be careful. Seeing Han Tian maneuvering his Dou Qi, Han Yu and Han Shui also hurriedly stepped back. They reminded Xiao Yan in a worried manner. Xiao Yan tilted his head. However, his body did not move even a little. His sleeves fluttered under the wild wind that headed toward him, but his dark black eyes had become exceptionally bright at this moment. Little brother Xiao Yan, you should be careful. This 9 turning wind steps is a Dou skill that gave me my reputation. Today, I shall display it. Do not blame me for bullying someone younger just because I am older. The dense wind lingered over Han Tian's legs as he softly cried out. Immediately, his feet stomped forward. Qi. A wild wind was stirred after his footsteps fell. Han Tian's body instantly disappeared within the howling wind. A glow flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes. In the next instant, his body suddenly stepped forward without any forewarning. Following the movement of his body, a hand that was wrapped by dense Dou Qi flew past him. What sharp perception! Flowing wind second turn. Surprise immediately flashed across Han Tian's eyes after his first palm missed. Immediately, his feet swiftly formed 2 mysterious arcs, transforming his body into a spiraling wind that pounced toward Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan merely smiled in the face of Han Tian, who was closely following him. His feet landed on the ground and an explosion sounded under them. A pushing force caused Xiao Yan's body to shoot forward. Exploding steps, Xiao Yan's first kind of agility Dou skill. He had not displayed it for many years after gaining the 3000 lightning movement. Now that he had used it with his micro-control, the effects were naturally not something that could be compared with back then. Third turn. Xiao Yan had just stabilized himself when a sudden sharp cry was suddenly emitted from behind him. A wild wind surged over. Xiao Yan's expression did not change. His right foot gently pressed on the ground. His toes adhered to the ground and swiftly slanted his body, narrowly dodging the attack that came from behind him. The entire interior of the hall was basically permeated by his spiritual strength. Even the slightest activity would be sensed by Xiao Yan. Although Han Tian's so-called 9 turning wind steps was able to stir a wild wind that would hide his body, it was totally ineffective in the face of the probing spiritual strength. In other words, every single action of his was clearly imprinted in Xiao Yan's mind. In such a situation, it was easier said than done to strike Xiao Yan. Moreover, if one were to talk about the exquisiteness of ability, Han Tian had some gaps when compared to Xiao Yan. Good fellow, you do have some ability. Fourth turn. Han Tian's expression also gradually became solemn after 3 of his attacks were narrowly dodged by Xiao Yan. He let out a deep cry and a dense green-colored Dou Qi whistled and rotated over the surface of his body. A suction force surged out from within it, causing everyone in the hall to hurriedly step back. The suction force surged and the speed of Han Tian also greatly soared. With a "xiu" sound, he transformed into a green glow that shot toward Xiao Yan. However, the latter dodged it once again with an angle that an ordinary person would not expect. Fifth turn. Sixth turn. The battle within the hall became more and more intense. Han Tian's speed also became more and more frightening. In the end, almost no one, other than a couple of people, could see his figure. All they could sense was the suction force that repeatedly spread from the spiraling wind. Despite this being the case, the linen-clothed, young man's expression still remained calm. His footsteps would occasionally advance and occasionally withdraw, or perhaps he would tilt sideways. Each slight movement enabled him to barely dodge Han Tian's attack. Impressive. Han Shui's pretty face was filled with joy as she watched the relaxed Xiao Yan. She ended up involuntarily exclaiming in a soft voice. He is indeed very frightening. Looks like he has become much stronger during these years. Han Yu also nodded slightly. Although Xiao Yan could fight with an expert Dou Huang in the past, he was far from this leisurely strolling manner. This person is very strong. Han Qi looked at the dazzling exchange in the battleground. His face had also gradually turned solemn before he spoke in a deep voice a moment later. If he were to engage in a life-and-death battle with second brother, it is likely that second brother would be no match for him. According to my guess, this person might really be able to fight with Hong Chen. A man who looked somewhat similar to Han Qi slowly spoke. Cuckoo, let's continue watching and see if he is really able to completely dodge all of second brother's 9 turning wind steps. Han Qi smiled and replied as his eyes watched the battle. 9 turns. Han Tian's face had already turned green at this moment. A deep green-colored spiraling wind wildly rotated under his feet. The hard ground was also cracked apart as he moved, revealing the soil under it. Xiu. The green glow flashed across the large hall. In the end, however, it merely touched Xiao Yan's sleeves as it flew past. 10 turns, 9 wind steps. Han Tian suddenly let out a stern cry when his attack missed again. His body turned around and transformed into a wind. He took 9 strides in a circle-like manner 10 feet from Xiao Yan with lightning-like speed. Following the 9 steps, 9 deep green-colored rotating winds appeared, completely sealing all of Xiao Yan's paths of retreat. Join! Han Tian's hand seal moved and the 9 spiraling winds immediately emitted a whirring wind sound. Immediately, they rotated in a wild manner and tore toward Xiao Yan in the middle. This time around, I will see just how you dodge it. Han Tian laughed out loud at Xiao Yan, who was sealed within the spiraling wind. Stop! A soft cry was emitted from the middle of the 9 spiraling winds the moment Han Tian's laughter sounded. Immediately, the space fluctuated slightly. The 9 spiraling wind actually paused for an instant. The instant the spiraling winds paused, a silver glow flashed out in a lightning-like manner. It immediately transformed into a human figure that slowly appeared in front of everyone. Mr. Han, thank you for allowing me to win. Xiao Yan cupped his hands together, grinned and spoke to Han Tian, whose smile had already stiffened on his face. Spatial strength? You are an elite Dou Zong. After the dullness continued for a moment, shock suddenly surged onto Han Tian's face as he involuntarily cried out loud. The slight spatial distortion strength that Xiao Yan had used earlier to pause the spiraling wind was clearly the spatial strength that only an elite Dou Zong could use. Han Tian's face was not the only one which was shocked. Everyone in the hall, including Han Qi, had stunned faces at this moment. Being an expert with half a foot in the Dou Zong class, he was even more sensitive to spatial strength. In that moment earlier, he was certain that Xiao Yan had indeed used a spatial distortion that only an elite Dou Zong could perform. Cuckoo, Mr. Han Tian is mistaken. I have yet to reach that level. This spatial strength is something that I can barely use because of some lucky encounter. However, it can only perform some insignificant help. Xiao Yan shook his head as he replied with a smile. The shock on everyone's faces was reduced only after hearing this. A 20-year-old or so Dou Huang was already the limit that they could endure. If he was a Dou Zong, it was likely that anyone who saw him would say, monster. Little brother Xiao Yan is really humble. Spatial strength is the indicator of an elite Dou Zong. Being able to control it with the strength of a Dou Huang is enough to shock people. I have lost this match. Cuckoo, it is really the case of the new generation replacing the old. With your talent and ability, it is likely that you will be able to make a name for yourself even in this Central Plains, Han Tian gently exhaled. His eyes suddenly landed on Han Shui and Han Yu. He smiled and said, the eyesight of you two girls is also quite good. These words, with a double meaning, caused these two ladies' pretty faces to instantly become fiery red. Han Qi also laughed. His gaze slowly swept across Xiao Yan. Although he was wearing some ordinary linen clothes, this ordinary young man appeared like a sharp sword at this moment. Perhaps due to him having just fought with someone, he emitted a heavy pressurizing feeling that caused one to have difficulty underestimating him. Han Qi stood up, cupped his hands solemnly to Xiao Yan and said in a deep voice, Brother Xiao Yan, if the Han clan is able to survive the danger this time, the Han clan will never forget your favor. The many members of the Han clan behind Han Qi also stood up in unison with solemn faces. They cupped their hands together and bowed to Xiao Yan. Han Shui and Han Yu by the side exchanged glances before taking a step back and bowing slightly to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan bitterly laughed in the face of such great courtesy. Looks like this matter was indeed extremely important to the Han clan. He could only sigh, cup his hands, and say in a deep voice. Xiao Yan will definitely do his best. Chapter 956, Zhu Gan. The smile on Han Qi's face became even denser when he heard Xiao Yan's words. He cupped his hands together and said, in that case, I will thank little brother Xiao Yan for lending us your support. Please tell us if there is anything that you require the Han clan to do. Although it was not impossible to find someone to defeat Hong Chen within the Han clan given its strength, these people were mostly the elders of the clan. However, if they were to act, it was likely that those old fellows from the Hong clan would not just sit idly and watch. This matter was restricted to the younger generation. If one were to seriously talk about it, there was really no one among the younger generation of the Han clan who could defeat Hong Chen. Xiao Yan's sudden appearance at this time could be considered to have resolved a difficult situation for the Han clan. Xiao Yan mused for a moment before speaking, I require some medicinal ingredients. The injuries within my body have yet to completely heal. During these 3 days, I need to get myself to recover to my peak condition. Oh. Brother Xiao Yan is still injured. Han Qi and the others were surprised when they heard this. Their opinion of Xiao Yan was once again raised significantly. He was able to easily dodge Han Tian's attack in his injured condition. It seemed that their hidden evaluation of him was a little low. Cuckoo, it's not a problem. This is the chief alchemist of my Han clan, old Mr. Zhu Gan. He is a tier 5 alchemist. Allow this elder to help take a look at you. It should be of some help to your injuries. Han Qi's gaze turned to an indifferent-looking old man beside him. This person had white hair and a beard. He was wearing an alchemist robe with a medicinal cauldron badge on his chest. On the medicinal cauldron were 5 bright ripples that were extremely glaring. Xiao Yan had already seen this old man when he had entered the room earlier. However, the other party was clearly a little haughty. He had been keeping his eyes shut since the beginning. Of course, one could not say that this elder was arrogant. Rather, most of the high-tier alchemists in the Central Plains acted in this manner. Moreover, the status of an alchemist also gave them sufficient qualification to do so. If one were to really talk about the strength of this Zhu Gan, he had at the very most just reached the Dou Huang class. Such a strength was nothing to the Han clan. However, his tier 5 alchemist status caused him to possess an extremely high position in the Han clan. From this, one could tell just how hot the demand of an alchemist in the Central Plains was. Despite vaguely being aware of just where the superiority of this old man originated from, Xiao Yan would naturally not take the initiative to form some relationship given his character. This was just a tier 5 alchemist. The Han clan might regard him as a treasure, but in Xiao Yan's eyes, this person was unimportant and ordinary. At this moment, this so-called old Mr. Zhu Gan finally opened his eyes slowly upon hearing Han Qi's words. His eyes glanced at Xiao Yan before immediately speaking in an indifferent manner, "Come over and allow the old me to have a look." A strange expression involuntarily flashed over Xiao Yan's face when he heard this. With his current alchemy level, he was definitely at the middle to upper levels of a tier 6 alchemist if one were to evaluate his skills. The old man opposite him was at the very most a tier 5 alchemist, yet this old man actually dared to say such words to him. The gap between each tier among alchemists was just like that between medicinal pills. They were heaven and earth apart. Unless it was because of some special reason like the heavenly flame, or some extremely outstanding spiritual strength, it was extremely difficult for one to leap across a tier and successfully refine a medicinal pill. The reason Xiao Yan was able to do this was entirely because he had fulfilled both criterias. Xiao Yan smiled as he thought of this in his heart. He slowly walked forward and handed his hand to Zhu Gan. Zhu Gan did not even stand up. He simply just sat on the chair and glanced at Xiao Yan. His shriveled hand was placed on Xiao Yan's hand and a spiritual strength was immediately transmitted into Xiao Yan's body. Roar! Zhu Gan's spiritual strength had just entered Xiao Yan's body when his spiritual perception suddenly changed. An invisible beast head formed from a flame appeared within Xiao Yan's body. After which, it violently roared at the spiritual strength belonging to Zhu Gan. A shocking spiritual strength erupted like a volcano when the roar sounded. Under that powerful spiritual strength, the spiritual strength belonging to Zhu Gan appeared just like a wild beast that had met a tiger, the king of the mountain. A whimper sounded as it carried a horror. It followed its original path and fled for its life. Within the large hall, Zhu Gan, who had his eyes tightly shut, suddenly revealed shock on his face. He threw aside Xiao Yan's hand as though he had been electrocuted. The chair under his body was shattered and his body also ended up hurriedly withdrawing by a couple of steps. He looked at Xiao Yan as though he had seen a ghost and spoke with a quivering voice, You. Zhu Gan was naturally able to sense the beast that had appeared in Xiao Yan's body earlier. It was formed from an extremely frightening flame. The thing that frightened Zhu Gan the most, however, was that the interior of the flame hid a frightening spiritual strength that was 10 to 100 times stronger than his. Compared with this spiritual strength, he was just like something floating under a large tree. All he could do was look up to it without having the slightest ability to fight it. Zhu Gan was certain that the enormous spiritual strength was something that even some Tier 6 alchemists did not possess. However, this young man in front of him who seemed to be around 20 years old, was it possible that he was also an alchemist? Moreover, this young man's tier was definitely higher than his. Old Mr. Zhu Gan, what is it? The sudden frightened act of Zhu Gan also caused Han Qi's group by the side to be startled. They hurriedly inquired. Cuckoo, the interior of my body is a little strange. Old Mr. Zhu Gan has been shocked a little. It's fine. Xiao Yan smiled. After which, he took a piece of white paper from the table beside him in passing and wrote some medicinal ingredients he required on it. After which, he flicked his finger and the white paper flew to Zhu Gan. He said, please help me gather all of these medicinal ingredients that I require. Being a Tier 5 alchemist, you should be aware of whether the medicinal strength of some medicinal ingredients is preserved well. Get someone to pass them to me once you are done. The words of Xiao Yan were not very polite. They were full of a commanding tone. This caused Han Qi and the others to bitterly smile. This Zhu Gan was not someone from the Han clan. Moreover, the Han clan had spent quite a great effort to invite him to be their chief alchemist. There are few members within the clan who are able to get him to do anything. He was a living Buddha who did not listen to anyone. This was even more so in the face of Xiao Yan's impolite tone. However, while Han Qi was prepared to say something to mediate the situation, Zhu Gan hurriedly received the white paper. After reading the 10+ medicinal ingredients written on it, the shock in his eyes grew even denser. With his eyesight, he was naturally able to tell that these medicinal ingredients would only be used when refining some high-tier medicinal pills. You, mister, please rest assured that I will choose the medicinal ingredients which have had their medicinal strength best preserved. Zhu Gan carefully took the white paper, hurriedly cupped his hands together, and reassured him. At this moment, he was certain that this young man in front of him was definitely an alchemist. Moreover, the tier of this young man was absolutely higher than his. After verifying this, a storm involuntarily surged within Zhu Gan's heart. Most alchemists had a teacher-disciple relationship when passing on the knowledge of alchemy. By being able to groom such a young high-tier alchemist, it was likely that Xiao Yan's teacher was not some unknown person. He might well be some grandmaster existence within the Central Plains region. Upon seeing this courteous manner of Zhu Gan, Han Qi and the others, who had wanted to help put in some good words for Xiao Yan earlier, immediately revealed a dull expression. Why had this usually haughty old fellow have a change of character today? Han Yu and Han Shui laughed when they saw the dull expressions of everyone. The both of them were vaguely aware that Xiao Yan also possessed the status of an alchemist. It was likely that something which they were unaware of had occurred and Xiao Yan and Zhu Gan made contact earlier. It was due to that interaction that caused the usually haughty Zhu Gan to become like this. While the two girls laughed, their hearts actually also felt some shock. Xiao Yan was able to completely dispel Zhu Gan's haughtiness. Clearly, Xiao Yan had revealed something that Zhu Gan had not expected. Moreover, if one wished to get a Tier 5 alchemist to become this respectful, one would at the very least have to be a higher alchemist tier than the other party. In other words, Xiao Yan was likely a Tier 5 or even a Tier 6 alchemist. The soft laughter of the two ladies also woke Han Qi and the others from their dull state. They exchanged looks with one another before glancing at Xiao Yan with a deeper meaning in their eyes. This young man seemed to possess an unfathomable aura. Shui, bring brother Xiao Yan along and find a room for him to rest. The matter of the medicinal ingredients should be able to be completed today. At that time, I will get someone to deliver them to Xiao Yan's room. Han Qi smiled as he handled the situation. Han Shui nodded slightly. She turned her head and smiled sweetly to Xiao Yan before speaking in a quiet voice, "Big brother Xiao Yan, please follow me." Without realizing it, the manner she used to address Xiao Yan had become a lot more familiar. Xiao Yan did not reveal much of a reaction upon hearing this. He cupped his hands to Han Qi and the others before turning around and following Han Shui. Han Qi's expression gradually became solemn as he watched the two backs which gradually disappeared from his sight. His eyes turned to Zhu Gan and asked, "Mr. Zhu Gan, earlier." Zhu Gan exhaled a breath. His gaze turned to Han Yu as he asked somewhat cautiously, "This Mr. Xiao Yan should also be an alchemist, right?" Han Yu did not hide anything with regards to this. Her delicate hand pulled aside a thread of silver hair in front of her forehead before she covered her mouth and softly laughed, "Old Zhu, when I was still training in the inner academy, Xiao Yan was already able to refine a tier 5 medicinal pill." The entire hall emitted the sound of people inhaling cold air when these words sounded. The hands of Zhu Gan, who had already expected this, trembled while fondling his beard. He ended up pulling out a hair. "Looks like Shuer has really performed a great service this time around. She has really invited a great god," Han Qi muttered. He immediately spoke in a deep voice, "Everyone listen up. Provide Xiao Yan with the best treatment. Do not slight him even a little. Any clan member who dares to offend him will be punished according to the clan rules." All the clan members hurriedly acknowledged the request when they heard Han Qi's stern cry. A Dou Huang class young man might not be sufficient for the Han clan to act in this manner. However, if the status of an alchemist that surpassed Zhu Gan was added on top of it, even the Han clan must be friendly to him in every possible way. The status of an alchemist was even more prominent in the Central Plains compared to any other region. This was because the number of experts in this place was greater than other places. Hence, it required an even greater amount of medicinal pills than other places. Chapter 957, The Location where Yao Lao was imprisoned. After Xiao Yan sent Han Shui out of a clean guest room in the backyard of the Han clan, he shut the door and sighed in relief. Honestly speaking, he really did not wish to get involved with the matter between the Han clan and the Hong clan were it not because of Han Shui and Han Yu. Of course, the reason he spoke was naturally not referring to Han Shui and Han Yu personally. Although the both of them were excellent women, he was not a person whose mind was ruled by another part of his anatomy. Naturally, he never had those thoughts. After observing Hong Chen from a distance today, he does indeed have a great strength. He might be an arrogant person, but it is just as the others have said. This fellow does indeed possess the qualification and capital to be arrogant. Xiao Yan came to the side of the bed before sitting cross-legged on it. His face revealed an expression of being in deep thought. The strength of this Han clan is definitely not like what one saw in the hall earlier. According to Xiao Yan's expectations, there were some experts from the older generation hiding behind the scene. After all, for the Han Yan to be able to fight against the Hong clan in Tianbei City, it was impossible that they did not possess an elite Dou zone. However, from what he saw today, other than Han Qi, who could be vaguely considered someone with half a foot into the Dou zone class, no one else had reached this stage. If this was the case for the Han clan, even less needed to be said about the Hong clan, which was a little stronger. Xiao Yan had already become enemies with such a faction after just arriving in the Central Plains. He could be considered unlucky. After sighing quietly in his heart, Xiao Yan tossed aside these thoughts. He was not an indecisive person. Moreover, he was clear about his grudges and favors. If there was a favor, he would repay it. If there was a grudge, he would also repay it. Han Shui had rescued him while he felt somewhat apologetic to Han Yu for stealing the treasure. Due to this, Xiao Yan would naturally not reject their requests given his character, even if this meant that the price was to offend that so-called Hong clan. By looking at Hong Chen today, it was likely that his strength is around that of a 7-star Dou Huang. It is quite similar to me. It must be said that his training talent is indeed surprising. Xiao Yan muttered to himself. Although his talent was extremely outstanding, it was something that he had trained all by himself. That Hong Chen, on the other hand, not only had the support of the entire clan, but was also groomed by the Wind Lightning Pavilion. It was considered normal for his achievement to not be any less than Xiao Yan's. After all, there were many hidden experts in the Central Plains region. It was likely that he would meet even more of them in the future. Although the achievements of this Hong Chen caused Xiao Yan to be surprised, it was only limited to this level. With Xiao Yan's current fighting strength, it was likely that hardly any people from the same class could defeat him. There were more than 10 experts at the peak of the Dou Huang class who had fallen to his hands. Even the names of elite Dou Zongs were left on his death list, much less a 7-star Dou Huang. Once I settle this matter and return the favor, I will leave this place. If it is possible, I should try to break through to the Dou Zong class before the start of the pill gathering. Although this will be extremely difficult, I can only think of a way to go all out in order to obtain the 3,000 burning flames. Xiao Yan's face was somewhat solemn. The pill gathering was the top alchemist grand meeting in the entire Dou Qi continent. That size was incomparable to any other huge gathering. One could even say that the pill gathering was the most outstanding competition in the alchemist world on the Dou Qi continent. Faced with this kind of top-notch alchemist gathering, even Xiao Yan had to treat it seriously. Currently, he might have already become a Tier 6 alchemist, but this was far from sufficient. It was likely going to be quite difficult if he wanted to rely on only this to enter the top 10. The 3,000 burning flame had sufficient allure to Xiao Yan. As long as he successfully swallowed it after breaking through to the Dou Zong class, he would at least possess the ability to fight a little even if he ended up meeting with the legendary elite Dou Zun. Hence, Xiao Yan must enter the top 10 in order to get the qualification to do so. Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath of air. His hands also slightly tightened. He was looking forward to the largest gathering in the alchemist world. It was rumored that his teacher had stood at that place back then and ended up becoming Yao Zunjia, who was renowned throughout the continent. Being Yao Lao's disciple, Xiao Yan naturally did not wish to embarrass his teacher's name at that place. Xiao Yan suppressed the many thoughts within his heart. His finger suddenly rubbed that white-colored ring before frowning slightly. Ever since Tian Hua Zunjia had absorbed the soul of the fierce spirit, he had been in a deep slumber. If this former Dou Zun were to wake up, it was likely that he would be a big help to Xiao Yan. Unfortunately, Xiao Yan did not dare use any external strength to wake him from his slumber. Xiao Yan softly sighed. He seemed to have suddenly recalled something as he flipped his hand. A jade bottle with an invisible flame covering it appeared in his hand. One could faintly hear a miserable cry being transmitted from within the jade bottle. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth contained a coldness. His finger rubbed over the mouth of the bottle before he beckoned to it. An extremely weak spirit slowly rose wrapped in a cluster of invisible flames. Finally, it appeared in front of Xiao Yan. At this moment, Han Feng was extremely weary after being burned by the heart flame for such a long period of time. Xiao Yan's heart flame could cause harm to a spirit. That kind of searing pain that spread out from deep within a spirit was really an unendurable torture to a spiritual body. Have you enjoyed enough? Xiao Yan glanced at the illusionary figure of Han Feng in front of him before asking indifferently. Han Feng's body immediately quivered intensely upon hearing Xiao Yan's voice. There was some additional fear in the vicious eyes he used to look at Xiao Yan. He was really suffering a fate worse than death under the grilling of the heart flame during this period of time. What exactly do you want to do? Just kill me already. Han Feng's voice was so weak that he was nearly on his last breath. Tell me the location where the Hall of Souls has locked up teacher. Xiao Yan spoke in a cold and indifferent voice. TSK, you wish to rescue that old fellow? Do you really think that the Hall of Souls is a place that anyone can just enter? Han Feng involuntarily laughed upon hearing his demand. Ah! The cold laughter had just sounded and Xiao Yan waved his hand with an expressionless face. The fallen heart flame that lingered outside of Xiao Yan's body was suddenly moved. Finally, it adhered onto Han Feng's body. A chi-chi sound appeared along with a sharp cry and waves of white smoke. Looks like you have not enjoyed enough during this period of time. Since this is the case, I shall let you enjoy this for half a year. One could not hear any emotion in Xiao Yan's voice. He waved his hand and the fallen heart flame carried Han Feng along as it once again entered the jade bottle. Don't. I'll speak. Han Feng hurriedly endured the searing pain and screamed when he saw that Xiao Yan was planning to store him inside the jade bottle again. Xiao Yan's hand paused. The fallen heart flame slowly dissipated. He glanced at Han Feng and indifferently said, "You have one last chance. I have quite a lot of time. The next time I summon you might be half a year or 1 year later. Hopefully, you will not be incinerated into nothingness by the heart flame." The illusionary body of Han Feng immediately trembled violently when he heard these words. A terror flashed across his eyes. A moment later, he finally clenched his teeth and said, "Will you allow me to leave if I tell you the location where Yao Chen is being locked up? You do not have the qualification to bargain with me." Xiao Yan's expression turned cold. The fallen heart flame that covered the exterior of Xiao Yan's body was about to be maneuvered again. Stop. I will tell you." The horror in Han Feng's eyes became even denser when he saw this and he hurriedly said, "The Hall of Souls has a branch hall that is located in a city named Ming City in the western region of the Central Plains. Yao Chen is locked up there. Western region of the Central Plains. Ming City." Xiao Yan slowly repeated these 2 words in his mouth. An excitement quietly rose in his heart. However, he did not reveal the ripple in his heart when he continued. "How many people from the Hall of Souls are guarding that branch hall? It is rumored that there are a couple of protectors. Moreover, there is also an honorable elder. That branch hall is a little more important, hence, the Hall of Souls has dispatched a genuine expert to protect it." Han Feng hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Honorable elder?" Xiao Yan's expression immediately changed a little when he heard this term. Currently, he was no longer completely ignorant of the Hall of Souls. It was not the first time that he had heard of the term honorable elder. This position was above that of an elder. Moreover, each honorable elder's strength was that of a genuine elite dozun. Could the large hall which I had reached with my spiritual perception through the fire seal back then be Ming City? Could that extremely frightening spiritual strength back then be something unleashed by the guarding honorable elder? Xiao Yan's eyes flickered. The thoughts in his heart were churning like a tide. If this matter is true, it seems that I will need to plan properly. An elite dozun, that is really a little too powerful for the current me. Even if I use the strongest extermination fire lotus, it is likely that I will not cause him much harm. After all, the difference between a dozun and a dozong is really vast. Xiao Yan gently exhaled when he thought until this point. His gaze coldly landed on Han Feng. He immediately waved his hand and the fallen heart flame once again swept over the latter before entering the jade bottle. The flame quickly rose and agglomerated into a fire seal on the mouth of the bottle. Hopefully, what you have said is true. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to die even if you wish to. A bone-chilling voice was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth and transmitted into that jade bottle, causing Han Feng to violently quiver. Xiao Yan slowly shut his eyes after throwing the jade bottle into his storage ring. The only thing he could do now was recover his strength. Only after he settled the matter in this place would he be able to roam the Central Plains and find a method for him to break through to the Dou Zone class. The room once again became quiet after Xiao Yan entered his training state. A gentle light flickered slightly and slowly expelled the darkness within. 2 days swiftly passed while Xiao Yan was recuperating within the training room. During these 2 days, the Han clan had also prepared all of the medicinal ingredients that Xiao Yan needed. After which, they instructed Han Shui to deliver them to Xiao Yan's room. Xiao Yan shut the door once again after having obtained the medicinal ingredients. Outsiders could only sense the heat that was seeping out of the room. However, due to the order that Han Qi had issued some time ago, no one dared to interrupt Xiao Yan. This allowed him to stay in an extremely quiet training environment. The 3 days limit that the Han clan had issued had arrived while this door was shut. Chapter 958, Sky Stone Stage. 2 tall figures were standing in a small yard outside of the room. A breeze blew past and their long hair fluttered, revealing a moving enchantment amid a cold stunningness, especially since both women's pretty face were somewhat similar. There was an additional unique style when one looked at them. Han Shui stretched her lazy waist after standing for a moment and seeing that there was little activity. Her perfect curves appeared extremely alluring under her silver-colored dress. After which, she sat on a stone chair and placed her hands on the stone table. She held her cheeks, revealing a great allure while her eyes roamed around. Compared to the quiet Han Yu, Han Shui was unable to sit still. After seeing that there was not the slightest activity within the room despite having waited for half a day, she involuntarily asked, "Why is he not out yet?" "Today is the 3rd day. Father and the others are all preparing to head to the Sky Stone stage. Why are you so anxious?" "Relax, given my understanding of him, he is not the type who has a problem being punctual. Since he has agreed to lend a hand, nothing unexpected will happen no matter what." Han Yu involuntarily covered her mouth and softly laughed when she saw her usually cold and indifferent sister acting in this manner. Han Shui stopped her pacing footsteps when she heard this. She was only quiet for a short while before she suddenly asked again, "Sister, do you think that something could have happened to him? He had suffered an extremely serious injury when I picked him up in the desert back then. He didn't even possess the strength to get up." Han Yu was startled. She raised her head slightly and her pretty face seriously looked at Han Shui's pretty face where a thread of enchantment was present amid its coldness. There seemed to be a hint of worry on it as well. "Sister, what are you looking at?" Han Shui involuntarily spoke in an annoyed manner upon being stared at by Han Yu. "Shui, have you fallen for Xiao Yan?" Han Yu hesitated for a moment before suddenly asking. A fiery redness immediately surged onto Han Shui's pretty face when she heard this. She said in an embarrassed manner, "Sis, what nonsense are you spouting? I have only been acquainted with him for a short while. I am only trying to remind you that Xiao Yan is indeed very outstanding. However, it is very difficult for the heart of such an outstanding man to be retained by someone. Moreover, he also has a girl that he likes." Han Yu spoke in a serious tone. Han Shui lowered her eyes slightly. She turned her head and softly said, "It's not what you think." She was quiet for a moment after her words sounded before she suddenly asked, "Is that girl very outstanding?" Han Yu's delicate hand parted a thread of bright silver hair in front of her forehead. A look of recollection flashed across her pretty eyes. A moment later, she bitterly smiled and said, "She's more than just outstanding. If one were to really talk about it, it is likely that she is the person who hid the deepest among the students of our batch. I once told you about Lin Xiuya. He is in existence on the top 3 of the strong ranking. However, he did not even last 10 exchanges in her hands. Moreover, she is a little younger than Xiao Yan. This kind of training talent is really demon-like." Han Shui bit her lower red lip with the back of her teeth when she heard Han Yu's soft sigh. A sentimental and dim feeling flashed through her pretty eyes without anyone discovering it. However, these feelings were swiftly hidden by her. She pounced onto Han Yu with a lovely smile and asked, "Don't tell me that she is even more outstanding than this haughty elder sister." "Haha, your elder sister also cannot be compared with her. Otherwise, I would have snatched him away in the inner academy back then." Han Yu smiled sweetly and replied. Creak. The tightly shut door was suddenly opened after Han Yu's words sounded. Immediately, a young man in linen clothes slowly walked out. He was startled when he saw the 2 ladies fooling around in the yard. The sudden appearance of Xiao Yan also stunned Han Yu and Han Shui. A bright redness swiftly appeared on their pretty faces. They hurriedly ceased fooling around, arranged their clothes, and finally recovered their reserved manner. "Cuckoo, is it time?" Xiao Yan turned his hand and shut the door before he asked with a smile. "Aye." Han Shui nodded. Her pretty eyes wandered once around Xiao Yan as she asked with some worry, "How are your injuries?" "I'm almost completely well." Xiao Yan smiled as he replied. After which, he waved his hand and walked out of the yard. "Let's go. Don't let Uncle Han and the others wait too long." Seeing Xiao Yan completely familiar with the route and looking as though he was in his own home, both Han Yu and Han Shui involuntarily muttered to themselves. After which, they ran a little and swiftly followed. The Sky Stone stage sat in the middle of Tianbei City. Its size was around 1,000 feet or so. If one were to carefully look at it, one would discover that this Sky Stone stage was completely built on an enormous rock. This enormous rock had existed since the Tianbei City first built the stage. It allowed time to corrode it, but hardly any trace of this corrosion remained. This place was also the place where the most attention in the Tianbei City was being placed. This was because every time some faction had a conflict, but did not wish to engage in a war, they would choose to have a match on it. The Sky Stone stage today was undoubtedly the most heated it had been during these 2 years because the ones who were going to have a showdown on the stage were the 2 main factions in the Tianbei City, the Hong and Han clan. Moreover, according to the rumors, the one who was fighting for the Hong clan was Hong Chen, who had been accepted as a disciple to the Wind Lightning Pavilion. The citizens of the Tianbei City were quite familiar with this name. This person had always been arrogant. However, he had displayed a shocking talent since he was young. After growing up, he caught the eye of the Wind Lightning Pavilion. It could be said that Hong Chen had lived these years in glory. The aura of a genius had never disappeared from him. If one were to talk about it, if Xiao Yan did not experience that occurrence when he was young, it was likely that his training path would be similar to Hong Chen's path. In the future, Xiao Yan might have even caught the eye of the largest sect in the Jiama Empire, the Misty Cloud sect, because of his outstanding training talent, and would have ended up becoming one of its members. However, the appearance of Yao Lao had changed his route. It was such a route that it allowed Xiao Yan to walk until today, reaching such a high level. The surroundings of the Sky Stone stage were densely packed seats that had been carved from that enormous rock. At this moment, these seats were flooded with numerous black masses of human heads. This time around, the exchange between the Hong and Han clan had attracted the eyes of the entire Tianbei City. There were some somewhat exceptionally elegant seats located at the two highest points in the western and northern parts of the Sky Stone stage. Only the leaders of some factions within the Tian Bay city had the qualification to sit in them. These spots enabled them to look down from above and absorb the entire arena in their eyes. At this moment, these northern seats already had quite a number of human figures seated in them. Most of the people were wearing red robes. Their chests had badges on them that represented the Hong Clan. In one of the Hong Clan seats was Hong Chen, whom Xiao Yan had seen back then. He was folding his hands over his chest and leaning against the rock chair. His face was heated as he looked at the exit of the arena. That pretty figure, which had lingered in his dreams, had always been imprinted in his heart. In his heart, he had already believed that this woman would definitely belong to him. Only he was able to match with such an outstanding woman. Following the flow of time, the number of people on the Sky Stone stage also increased. The boiling noise surged to the clouds, forming a large sound wave that spread out in a ripple-like manner, causing everyone in Tian Bay City to hear the noise of this place. When the dense seats on the Sky Stone platform were gradually filling up, a large group of human figures finally appeared at the entrance of the arena. Their appearance immediately stirred a commotion within the arena. It's the people from the Han clan. They are finally here. It is rumored that Hong Chen had said that as long as the Han clan was able to find someone of the same generation to defeat him, the Hong clan will not be enemies with the Han clan for the next 10 years. Hey, these words may sound nice, but there is really no one in the younger generation within this Tian Bay city who can beat this unlikable fellow. It would be difficult even for Han Yu from the Han clan. If the Han clan were to lose this time around, they would have to lose an angel-like daughter. The people from the Han clan slowly climbed the stone stage amid a countless number of private conversations. After which, they paused on the part of the rock stage that was opposite the Hong clan. Cuckoo, head of the Han clan, you are finally here. I thought that you would not turn up today. A large middle-aged man in the leader's seat of the Hong clan, who was of similar age to Han Qi, stood up and laughed loudly upon seeing the appearance of the group from the Han clan. Hong clan's head has thought too much. Since the Hong clan is willing to maintain 10 years of peace with our Han clan, we will naturally have to receive it. Otherwise, we would be letting down the good intentions of the Hong clan. Han Qi raised his eyes and spoke indifferently. That is the clan head of the Hong clan, Hong Li. A soft voice that carried a serene fragrance was transmitted into Xiao Yan's ear. He turned to take a look and found that it was Han Shui. I'm afraid that before you have received my good intentions, you will have lost your daughter. Haha, but you need not worry, I will be extremely tolerant to the daughter-in-law of my Hong clan. Hong Li coldly laughed. Alright, let's not waste our breath. I don't have much time and will need to return to the northern pavilion to train during these 2 days. Hong Chen frowned and stood up. His body shook and a faint thunderous roar sounded. His body appeared on the spacious stone stage below in a ghost-like manner. His gaze was arrogant as he looked at the Han clan seats and cried, there is no need to be so long-winded. We will talk after we have fought. Who is coming to face me? The gazes of the entire place instantly turned to the spot where the seats of the Han clan were located upon hearing Hong Chen's cry. Finally, they remained on Han Yu. It seemed that she was the only one among the younger generation of the Han clan who had entered the Dou Huang class. Han Yu merely smiled sweetly while being under the focus of all the eyes present. She immediately shook her head slightly and her delicate finger pointed to a spot beside her. Her clear moving voice reverberated over the entire arena. His opponent is not me. It's him. A countless number of gazes suddenly shifted. Finally, they paused on an unfamiliar young man in the Han clan seats who was wearing an ordinary linen clothes. Everyone was instantly stunned. Hong Chen's eyes were somewhat dark and cold as they were thrown at Xiao Yan. The arrogance and belittlement in his eyes was not even slightly hidden. Even if you wanted to find someone to die for you, you should have found a decent one, no? Xiao Yan merely smiled when he heard the cold laughter and disdain that was transmitted from Hong Chen's mouth. His smile contained a faint chillness. Chapter 959, Fight. The Han clan should have a reason behind their actions. After all, this match concerns the rest of Han Yu's life. Private conversations around the arena suddenly sounded the moment Xiao Yan appeared. Numerous shocked gazes repeatedly swept over his body. Hong Li's brows were knitted slightly as he looked at the unfamiliar Xiao Yan from the seats of the Hong clan. With his understanding of the Han clan, the other party would definitely not randomly find someone to die for them in this kind of situation. However, if this was not the case, could this young man really contend with Hong Chen? There was an old man wearing gray-colored robes beside Hong Li. The old man had his eyes shut, seemingly ignoring the noise of the outside world. His hands were hidden under his sleeves while his body leaned against the backrest of the chair. There was a green-silver-colored badge on his chest. A tower with a faint lightning glow lingering over it was drawn on the badge. The old man opened his shut eyes upon hearing Hong Li's words. He glanced at Xiao Yan before using a hoarse voice to faintly speak. This little fellow is also very strong. I wonder where the Han clan found such a helper. Oh. Will Hong Chen be able to defeat him? Hong Li became a little stern upon hearing this. By being able to get this old fellow to evaluate him like this, it seemed that this young man with an ordinary appearance was really not a scapegoat that the Han clan had sent out. Most of the high-class Dou techniques of my Wind Lightning Pavilion has been learned by Hong Cheng. Moreover, the Qi method which he practices is also a top Qi method of my Wind Lightning Pavilion. Forget about those of similar levels. His fighting strength could fight with even experts at the peak of the Dou Huang class. There are indeed people of the same generation who could defeat him in the Central Plains. However, such a person has not appeared in Tianbei City. The old man once again slowly shut his eyes upon saying these words. Hong Li's heart sighed in relief after hearing the gray-robed, old man speak in this manner. His face revealed a cold smile. He wanted to see just how ugly the expression on Han Chi's face would be after being defeated. Hong Che's eyes lazily swept over Xiao Yan on the enormous stone arena. He said, "Tell me your name." Xiao Yan smiled. He ignored this fellow's arrogant words and softly laughed, a nameless individual, Xiao Yan, who cannot be compared with the great reputation of young master Hong Chen. Don't pay lip service to this father of yours. I will give you 10 breaths time to decide if you wish to get lost by yourself or for me to turn you into a cripple and toss you away. Hong Chen's face turned cold as he cried out. There is no need for 10 breaths. Let's just fight. Xiao Yan shook his head. His face was completely harmless. This Hong Chen was indeed as arrogant as the people around had described. Hong Chen's eyes turned gloomy. He stared at Xiao Yan sinisterly and said, "Since you wish to seek death, do not blame this young master for not showing mercy." Numerous lightning glows suddenly surged from Hong Chen's body the moment his voice sounded. Finally, they transformed into a layer of lightning glow that wrapped around his entire body. Lightning Dou Qi He, Xiao Yan looked at the deep silver-colored Dou Qi that covered Hong Chen. Countless numbers of silver snakes of lightning leaped in all directions. Clearly, this fellow practiced a lightning affinity Qi method that was known for its powerful offensive strength. Remember my name, Hong Chen. Being defeated by my hands will be your honor. Hong Chen gave a sneer and suddenly stomped down. A lightning bolt the size of an arm shot towards Xiao Yan from the ground, moving like a snake. Xiao Yan raised his head slightly as he looked at the lightning glow that extended over in a snake-like manner. He raised his eyes slightly and his foot gently stepped forward. A flame-like jade-green Dou Qi also shot out before colliding with the lightning glow. A sudden muffled sound appeared and the enormous rock where the collision occurred ended up with half a foot large hole. Just attack. Young Master Hongchen, do not take little tricks out, Xiao Yan laughed faintly as he spoke. Hey, you are actually even more arrogant than this young master. In that case, we will see if you have the qualification to allow me to use all my strength. Hongchen's eyes turned cold. A bright, silver glow suddenly erupted and his body appeared in front of Xiao Yan in the blink of an eye in ghost-like manner. A fist with bright lightning light carried a chi-chi wind sound as it violently smashed toward Xiao Yan's head. The wild and violent lightning strength that came toward Xiao Yan caused his eyelids to raise. His feet randomly shifted left and a fist that was covered in a lightning glow narrowly flew past his ear. Hongchen merely smiled coldly when Xiao Yan dodged his attack. His fist was suddenly spread out and his 5 fingers were curled into a strange claw shape. They violently tore toward Xiao Yan's shoulder. The hand claw was suddenly waved down before it stilled. One could see that 2 of Xiao Yan's fingers covered in a dense Dou Qi were piercing the palm of the hand claw like a dagger, completely stopping the force on it. You have some skill. Surprise also surfaced on Hongchen's face when his attack was stopped. Suddenly he cried out coldly, "Try the Wind Lightning Pavilion's Wind Lightning Claw." The cry had just sounded when a lightning glow surged on his hand claw. A couple of lightning glows bent in a strange manner before agglomerating into an extremely sharp lightning claw above his finger. Hongchen cried out furiously when the hand claw was formed. The energy on the hand claw soared and it forced Xiao Yan's fingers back. The hand claw carried an extremely sharp lightning strength as it furiously hacked down. This hacking tore the air apart. A blurry silver-colored hand claw afterimage appeared in the sky. Xiao Yan also felt somewhat surprised in his heart upon sensing the sharpness of the wind claw. His fingers changed swiftly before he suddenly clenched his hand. Immediately, jade-green Dou Qi carrying a thread of flame appeared and violently collided with Hongchen. Bang! Hongchen's body was a little dull when this deep sound appeared. He swiftly recovered and a fierceness flashed across his eyes. The 2 claws suddenly danced and numerous after images appeared in a dazzling manner. The sharp wind from the claws swiftly covered Xiao Yan's entire body. A whistling sound appeared and repeatedly reverberated over the arena. Xiao Yan's expression remained impassive in the face of this wild and violent attack by Hongchen. His hand was curled and immediately formed a defense in front of his body. With the help of his spiritual perception, the genuine attacks of Hongchen did not escape Xiao Yan's detection regardless of how fast the attacking speed was. Hence, each time a claw wind, that contained a killing intent, headed over, it would be violently sent back by Xiao Yan with a punch. Both parties' claws and fists repeatedly formed numerous afterimages in front of them. This caused the countless number of people watching the stage to exclaim out loud. No one expected that Xiao Yan would be able to remain undefeated after having so many exchanges with Hongchen. Wind Lightning Kill. A serious expression finally surfaced in Hongchen's eyes after his attacks were blocked many times. The underestimation in his heart was also lessened a little. His claw immediately changed as he let out a furious cry. A faint lightning roar suddenly sounded. The many hand claw afterimages suddenly stilled at this moment before swiftly shrinking back. Within a short period of time, a hand claw covered by a dense lightning claw strangely appeared along with a faint thunder roar. It carried a lightning-like momentum as it violently grabbed at Xiao Yan's heart. From the look of this momentum, it was likely that Xiao Yan's heart would be dug out if he was struck. Xiao Yan exhaled gently before taking a step back. A stern coldness suddenly surged into his dark black eyes. An incomparably powerful Dou Qi surged out like floodwaters from within his body in all directions. At this moment, Xiao Yan had completely displayed his 7-star Dou Huang strength. The expressions of the countless of people present changed upon sensing the powerful Dou Qi that suddenly surged out of Xiao Yan's body. An exclamation resounded like a wave. Dou Huang. This person's strength is likely even stronger than Han Yu from the Han clan, right? No wonder. Xiao Yan's clenched his fist tightly as the Dou Qi surged. It paused for a moment before it was instantly thrown out. Octane blast. The strength of the fist suddenly soared by a couple of times while it was still traveling. An ear-piercing sonic boom resounded around the fist. The fist violently collided with Hong Chen's lightning claw amid many shocked eyes. Bang! A low, deep collision sound abruptly appeared. Powerful air ripples surged out from the point of contact. Numerous spiderweb-like cracks also spread on the enormous large rocks around. A human figure suddenly shot past while the crack lines spread. His feet rubbed against the ground and formed an obvious scar that was over a dozen meters long. Everyone's eyes hurriedly looked over and they involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air. The person who was forced back was actually Hong Chen. A countless number of gazes slid away after lingering on Hong Chen for a moment. All of them paused on the young man who had merely taken 2 steps back. The shock within their eyes grew even denser. This person had actually gained the upper hand in a head-on collision with Hong Chen. Just what great being was this fellow? Xiao Yan waved his sleeves gently and his finger pressed on his arm in a lightning-like manner. The finger was flicked and a wild and violent lightning strength was tossed out of his body. You actually think that this little lightning hidden force would be able to harm me? Hong Chen, who had stabilized his body, currently possessed an unusually sinister face. He looked at Xiao Yan in a gloomy manner and said, "Unexpectedly you are also a 7-star Dou Huang. You have hidden quite deeply. No wonder the Han clan has looked for you. You do possess the qualification to be my opponent, but the strength that you have displayed is far from sufficient if you wish to beat me." A low, deep roar was suddenly emitted from Hong Chen's throat when his voice sounded. Immediately, a crackling sound appeared from within his body. Countless silver snake-like lightning bolts extended from his bones, wrapping him within a layer of lightning. Being within a lightning web, Hong Chen's aura also swiftly soared. "Seeing that you are able to force back this young master, I shall let you take a look at the secret technique of the Wind Lightning Pavilion today. Lightning God descend." Hong Chen's feet suddenly stomped down and countless numbers of silver snakes surged out from under his feet. Within a short instant, it permeated the area within a radius of hundreds of feet. Hong Chen, who was within it, appeared like a lightning god. His aura was terrifying. The expressions of everyone in the Han clan changed when they saw that Hong Chen had actually used the lightning god descend. Han Shui and Han Yu also exchanged looks. They were able to see a little worry from the other party's eyes. However, when their gazes looked to Xiao Yan, they merely saw him with his usual calmness. His emotions did not sway even a little because of Hong Chen's transformation.